I have the distinguished honor of introducing Commissioner Levine-Cava, who is our Commissioner for District 8, and she is going to be moderating our panel today. We're so happy to have all four of you with us today. We're proud that History Miami gets to bring you all to have this conversation, and we look forward to having all of you participate. Thank you so much, and enjoy the conversation locally.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much. This is actually my real seat when I sit as county commissioner. So that was very thoughtful to have me sit here. And it's just really great to be with all of you. What an attentive audience. I know that even with all the technical difficulties, you were really hanging on to every word, trying to learn everything you possibly could about this critical issue. And I know we have several schools here represented. I want to do a special shout out for my district school, Homestead High. Yay, Homestead. Did I have that right? Do I have that right? And but I know we have wonderful schools from throughout our great county. And thank you so much to History Miami for bringing history into the present and with you into the future. So before we get going with the panel and the important questions and your questions, I want to just say a little point of personal preference. That's what we call it whenever we want to interrupt and say whatever is on our minds. So my point of personal preference is that my uncle, Robert Levine, was deputy administrator for the War on Poverty with Sergeant Shriver in the Office of Economic Opportunity, reporting to President Johnson. So many of these programs that you heard about, my uncle helped to design. He's now passed away. I'm so very, very proud of that history in my family and of the great work that was done by my forebear, Robert Levine. And of course, as was said by my dear friend, Professor Peter Edelman, who also spoke on the first panel, we really need a new war on poverty. Because even though we would be so much worse off without that first war on poverty, we're really losing gains. And we're increasing in our inequality across the country, particularly in Miami-Dade. We're now the fourth most unequal city in the entire country. And when you factor in the housing costs with transportation costs, we're the most expensive place to live of the major metropolitan areas in the country today. So we have a huge distance to close, a huge gap to close, and I know with your commitment, with your activism, we'll be able to solve some of these big challenges. So we are here, first of all, on my left, not with Sari, but with Paco Velez, who's CEO of Feeding South Florida. And we'll start with you, Paco. What does poverty look like today? And I don't know, can you all see him if he sits at his place? It's okay? Okay, good. So at ease. And you get to push the red button.
Super.
Okay.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, sans technology issues, but a wealth of information about what's going on what's gone on in the country and what's going on in the country today. A little bit about what poverty looks like here. I'll tell you a quick story of what poverty looks like. A 13-year-old boy was inside a convenience store, and unfortunately the convenience store was closed at the time. So he's inside this convenience store. Right outside this convenience store, two police officers show up, draw their guns, and point them at the little child and ask him why he's in the convenience store when it's closed, or why he broke into the convenience store. And the reason he told the police officers was that his younger brother was hungry and they had nothing to eat at the house. So what poverty looks like today is pretty much what you guys heard up on the screens today. It's a family who's struggling to make ends meet, struggling to put food on the table, pay their rent or their mortgage, and their transportation, as well as daycare costs. So there's a lot of issues with our inequality. Those who have a lot and those who don't have enough. And so our job at Feeding South Florida is try to get food from those who have it to those who need it, so our children and our young adults don't have to turn to crime in order to support their families.
Thanks so much for that, Paco. And now we have Mr. Joshua Williams, the founder of Joshua's Heart, which he started when he was 5, no? 4.5, but who's counting? So Joshua, tell us, for you, what does poverty look like here in Miami-Dade?
For me, well, before I start, I just want to say the definition of poverty, which is the state of deprivation or lack of socially acceptable amount of money or material possession. And I think that poverty is something that is very, it's in the U.S., and a lot of people don't actually notice it and see that it's in the U.S. A lot of people see that it's in Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world, and they're oblivious to the fact that it's actually in America and it's in their towns. And hunger has been here for a long time, and poverty has been here for a very long time. And I think it's up to us to change the world to try to combat that. And in the U.S., there's a huge problem with income poverty where people are living below minimum wage or at minimum wage, and we need to try to combat that, and there's many ways to do that.
Could I just follow up for you, Joshua, and just tell us how it was that at age 4.5 you recognized that this was a problem?
Well, I was on my way to church one day, and earlier that day, my grandmother gave me $20 to do whatever I wanted with. And we stopped at a red light, and I saw a homeless man. And this was the first time that I saw that people were hungry and that they needed help. And I saw this because the man was holding a sign, and it said, "Need money, need food, lost my job." And I asked my mom why he was there and why he was in that position and why he was asking for food. And she explained to me, that he was homeless. And this was the first time that I was made aware that people were hungry. And I was really shocked by it, that in America, people were living in these conditions. And I didn't feel like it was right. So I gave him the $20 in the end, and this was the first time that I saw that I could do something, whether it's big or small, to change the world. And that was the start of my foundation, Joshua's Heart.
Thank you. Great. That's great. And Dr. Shedbourne, yes, thank you. So it's follow your heart. When something's in your heart, no matter your age, you can make a difference. Thank you. So Dr. Shedbourne is CEO of Camillus House, which is one of our leading providers for homeless services here in Miami-Dade. And Dr. Bourne, please tell us, what does it look like here?
Good afternoon, everybody. How can you follow this young man? It's pretty humbling. I started at Camillus House just a few months ago because I was interested in the plight of the people that I thought needed a lot more assistance, a lot more support. And I really thought that the face of poverty would look like a certain ethnic group. I thought it would look more male dominated. I thought it would look more episodic, meaning that people just sort of filtered in and out of the system. And I realized the chronic nature of homeless population, which I think is poverty at its extreme, as you, Josh, recognized at a young age. I think it's also a problem of mental illness and substance abuse and lack of education and different challenges, and really a breakdown of the family in many ways, where we're not there as much for each other as we really should be. And so it's partly why I really take my hat off to what Josh did, because I think that the more that we give, the more that we can receive, and that really makes a difference. So I think poverty is all of us, and the responsibility to help end poverty or address poverty is with all of us.
Thank you. Let me just follow up with you. We have had a lot of news about homeless recently, a lot of attention to issues going on, particularly in Miami, city of Miami. Can you describe a little bit what the challenges are here?
Which challenge? You know, it's interesting. I was going to start like Paco did and just really tell a story. And we have a program. Camillus has emergency, transitional, and permanent housing, as well as clinics and other services to provide care to the extreme poor. And one of the biggest challenges we have right now is we have a program called the MAT program, which brings in folks who have no place to stay and are sort of desperate. So they come to us where they can get showers, sleep outside on a mat on the floor. So it's not what you would call luxurious conditions. And there's one man in particular and who worked very hard. He stayed with us for 60 days in the MAT program, saved $1,000 during this time working odd jobs, and worked really hard. And the biggest challenge, the biggest obstacle for him in the end was you would think that with $1,000 he would be able to afford to move into some place. And he seemed to be bringing in about $600 a month at this point, and he couldn't even find any place that would allow him to move in. So then he stayed a little bit longer, got up to $2,000 in savings. And then finally the landlord said, you know what, it's really a problem. You have bad credit. So no matter how much money you bring to the table, we're not going to be renting an apartment for you. And so I think that that's a perfect example of we don't know some of our actions, how it's going to come back to bite us long term. And I think that's one perfect example of somebody really struggling, sleeping out on the floor, sleeping under the elements, relying on the mercy of us as a community to come together and the ministries of Camillus, but at the same time, working really hard, odd jobs, saving $2,000. That's a lot of money. And still having the door thrown in his face that he can't really find an affordable place to live.
Wow. We have here at the County Commission a Prosperity Council that was convened by the chair, Jean Monestime, and we're looking at these sorts of systemic problems like the cost of housing that's so high here and the income's still low. So we have about half of our population just struggling to make ends meet, and then there's those who couldn't ever afford to get in to even basic housing. Thank you for the story. So, Paco, back to you. Tell us what Feeding South Florida is doing. I know you're doing so much to address the issue.
So Feeding South Florida, we're one of 202 food banks across the country under Feeding America. Not sure if any of you guys know who Feeding America is or seen some of the commercials or some of the actors on television speaking about Feeding America. But as a food bank, we do a few things. One, we rescue food from those who have it, grocery stores, farms, distribution centers, the ports, places like that. And we get it to our partner agencies. Our partner agencies, we have over 330 different partners in the 4-county area from Palm Beach down to the Keys. And this past year, we distributed or rescued and distributed over 40 million pounds of food and got it onto the tables of those families who are struggling. Along with that, we help our families with the SNAP application. Some of you guys heard that up on the monitor. It was food stamps. So we help our families navigate through that application. It's about as difficult as doing your taxes, and probably you get in as much trouble if you do it wrong as you would if you would do your taxes wrong.
And it's called SNAP now. Right?
Correct.
Which stands for?
The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Okay.
And it's supposed to help our families with some of the basic needs, whether it's protein or grains or fruit and vegetables, primarily fruit and vegetables, and put food on the table. We also provide backpacks, little packs of food for some of the kids, about 2,000 kids in schools every single week. And it's a little Ziploc bag full of 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, and 2 dinners. And for those kids who are complaining or of headaches and stomach aches on Mondays, the guidance counselors and nurses realized that they didn't have anything to eat over the weekend. So they let us know, and then we go there, provide these backpacks or these little Ziploc bags, and they get placed inside their little backpack, and that way no one can make fun of them or no one knows that they're in need, and they take them home and they open up their pop-top cans and little cereal bowls, and they're able to eat over the weekend. So a few of the things that we do for the families, right now there's 871,000 individuals that we serve in the 4-county area, the majority obviously being in Miami-Dade.
Great, thank you so much. It's great. So it's food recovery, redistribution, assistance with getting access to the federal programs, and you stock a really robust warehouse of food. I've been there, and you have all kinds of basics, and you provide them not directly to individuals so much at that location as to places that do feeding of, so institutions and programs that are providing for others. So thank you so much for what you do. How about you, Joshua? Tell us what you're doing to address hunger and poverty.
Well, my foundation, Joshua's Heart, we give out food to those who are in need. We fundraise and we bring awareness about poverty and different issues that are going on in our community. We have given out almost 1 million pounds of food so far, and we have raised over $400,000. And we use the power of youth to change the world. And we have a junior advisory board, which is with the JAB, and it's created to empower kids to bring awareness about hunger, poverty, and literacy, and lack of education, different things like that. And also, we help them use their ideas and their passions to change the world. We teach them how to fundraise and how to change the world in the end. So those are some ways that Joshua's Heart.
And how can people get more information about Joshua's Heart?
If you want to learn more about us, you can go to our Instagram, our Facebook, our Twitter, follow us. It's all at Joshua's Heart. You can go to our website or Google us, which is joshuasheart.org. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Boren, tell us what you're doing at Camillus, and you're much more than a shelter, so tell us all about it.
Most people think of Camillus as either a soup kitchen or a shelter. And as I mentioned, we actually have 14 sites all the way down in Homestead, all the way to North Miami, some specialty housing, some emergency housing. Our emergency housing is clearly just that. It's an average of less than 60 days, people sleeping, as I mentioned, on the mats, but sometimes in some of the shelter beds. And we have about 500 of those. We have several hundred transitional housing units. And what that really means is housing where people are learning to get their lives back together, whether it's a formal structural educational program, substance abuse treatment, things like that, so that for up to 2 years they're staying with us on their journey to recovery. And then we have permanent housing, and our permanent housing is for special needs populations, primarily those with severe mental illness. And that's a huge percentage. Most people don't realize that Miami has the highest percentage of severely mentally ill in the community, in the country. So our community is disproportionately impacted by that. And I think that's what you see a lot of times when you see folks on the streets, when you see people trying to make a living, you know, whether they're sometimes panhandling on the streets or hanging out, and they sort of scare you. Can imagine the fear that they have inside as well. So it's pretty severe.
Yeah, and so just to underscore, there's a lot of mental illness among the homeless population or substance abuse, but there's also families who can't afford housing. There's lots of people who are working, even full-time or multiple jobs, and are still homeless. The programs that Paco runs, the Feeding South Florida, they're serving not just people who are unemployed, but they're serving people who are working, and they're having to supplement their income with food at food pantries and the like. So this is the new face of poverty, is most of us. Okay, so I want to leave lots of time for your discussion, so I'm going to go to our last question for the panel, and then we'll open up to you. I'm going to sort of combine two things. Why is poverty bad for our country, and what do you think we should be doing to address it? So we'll start with you.
Sure. So poverty is obviously bad, but it's bad for our country. It weakens our country, and it weakens our country in many different ways. Depends on who you're speaking with. When you talk about weakening our country when you're hungry, you're not eating. When you're not eating, you're not learning. So you weaken the workforce. You weaken the folks that are trying to go out there and make the United States a better place, whether it's through employment or through any other kind of job where they're having to protect this country, either through their intelligence or through their physical attributes, I guess. And what I mean by that is, with poor nutrition, if you look at some of the defense or the armed forces, they'll tell you that unfortunately there are fewer and fewer people graduating high school that are ready to protect this country. And so when you look at poverty, it really has an overall effect on health. It has an overall effect on education, an overall effect on protecting this country, and a huge impact on crime. whether it's crime that I mentioned a little while ago with kids trying to feed themselves, or you look at folks dropping out of school because they need to get a job or they need to go do odd jobs so they can help their family put food on the table, or they just can't wait long enough and they need to go out there and either start robbing or assaulting or selling drugs in order to make ends meet. And so I believe that is how poverty is bad, pretty much for this country. And forgot the second part. How are we addressing it?
How would you address? What solutions do you have?
So the solutions would be you have to coordinate services. You just have to. And what I mean by that is you have folks that fund nonprofit organizations, and you have nonprofit organizations that meet the need. So when you're looking at a specific area, whether it's a zip code, a city, a county, whatever it is, you have organizations doing all kinds of stuff on this side. And then you have funders doing all kinds of stuff on this side. And the money and the services are going every which way without actually focusing and saying, what do we want to solve? Do we want to solve hunger? Do we want to solve poverty in a specific zip code, in a specific neighborhood? And once you've identified this specific area, how can we all coordinate services through feeding folks, through housing, through health, through education, through all these different ways, and then focus our energy on this specific area and meet those needs, and then replicate that across the rest of the city, county, state, country.
And we do have an initiative that brings groups together. We have the Food Policy Council, and we've got some other efforts. And I know I've been asked to look at how we can end hunger as a community by really pooling our resources. So hopefully we'll have the muscle to get that done.
I'm sure you will. Yeah.
Okay. Joshua, how about you? Why is this such a big problem, and how would you go about solving it?
Well, I think something that poverty affects in the country is our economy, which is very important to the United States as a whole. It reduces education too, which leads to a decrease in productivity in the United States, which in the end leads to a decrease in economic growth, which is very important in the long run because the U.S., we all wanted to expand and grow and let our country be powerful in the end. And I think that it's important that we need to get rid of poverty so that we can strengthen our economy and strengthen our workforce. I also think that we can change poverty and lower it in many ways. So I made a list of ways that we can do that, so I'm just going to run through it really quickly. One thing is access to credit, food donations and distributions, transitioning to kind of an independence of letting each person be independent to themselves, self-dependence, urban farming, which is a concept that one of my friends actually made, older friend I should say, but he made something where he plants farms on rooftops and buildings, so there's in cities, which is urban farming, so there's a lot more food in the communities to spread out to people. Access to education, social change, awareness. I think we should change certain aspects of government action and use it more to change people's lives. Empowering women, birth control education, raising the minimum wage, higher quality education, creating jobs, and basically reforming the criminal justice system too. And I think all of this combined, we can help impact poverty and changing the world.
Okay, I dare you to talk that, Dr. Boren.
I'm not going to try. Thank you for clarifying something, Commissioner. To answer the question is, why is this bad for our population as a community? I mean, I think we want to avoid the extremes, and we want to make sure that, we're treating each other with respect and dignity. And I think that by addressing poverty, it's a strong way that we can do that. How do we do that? We work together. And so, for example, I believe we're a partner with you guys for Feeding South Florida. On both sides, when we have excess resources, we send it that way. When they have excess resources, they send it to us. So I think partnership is very key. And when I talk about the Camillus population, it tends to be the extreme of the homelessness, the poverty, the chronic homeless that have been on the streets for more than a year. But there's numerous other agencies, and I just happen to be the one represented today of the homelessness. There's a group called Lotus House that takes care of women and children, and that's their special niche. There's another one called the Chapman Partnership that takes care of men, women, and children as a family, as individuals. It's very important that we all work together and we collaborate and make sure that we find synergies and whatever we can do together. And that's why when I talk about severe mentally ill, I don't mean to say all homeless folks are severely mentally ill, because it's not the case. But those that you see on the streets, and the last point in time count showed that there was 1,007 people living on the streets in Dade County that had been living there for over a year. So that's a lot of folks, and that's, it's a small number compared to the several thousand in the community, but we can all agree that one homeless person is too much. But when you look at 1,000 people who've been on the streets for at least a year, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, and I think that helps to frame this question for us, because we have extreme poverty of people who are on the street, who really have no ability to, in their current condition, work. And then we have people who are working in the economy, trying to raise perhaps a family, and still cannot afford to meet basic needs here in this community. So poverty has many faces, and here we are together, all committed to doing what we can and in our lifetimes, and to talk with you about your ideas. What can we do? So I'm not sure what's the process for participation here. Do you want people to come up to the microphone if they would like to make a comment or ask a question? Yes, please. Any instructions for us?
Yes, so if you have any questions, if you want to go up to the podium and state your name, grade, and school, if you're one of the students.
Yeah, and just in the interest of making sure we have maximum participation, if you could keep your question or your comment down to no more than 2 minutes. That's the time the commission gives. We're not going to run the clock on you, but just so that lots of people can have time.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us this afternoon. My name is Dinkanesh O'Connor. I am covering this event for the Miami Times. I'm also an adjunct professor, and I can't tell you how many miserable teachers I meet, teachers who are working in impoverished schools that don't have the resources, who have to navigate the bureaucracy, they're not inspired because they're not being adequately paid. I just, while we're talking about the extremities of poverty, I was hoping you could address a little bit the people who are kind of on the cusp. The other day I had to go cover an assignment at a school called Brownsville Middle School, and I was mortified. It looked like a miniature prison. There was cement everywhere, even the playground across the street. If a child slipped and fell, they could easily get a concussion. There was no colors, there was no technology, and it was really pathetic. And I just wonder how the people in the middle who are not being adequately paid for, like teachers, when they're not inspired, then obviously they can't inspire the students. How do we take care of the people who are doing the heavy lifting in the middle?
Thank you very much for your question, and thanks for coming from Miami Times. And, I'm just going to say a little bit about that, and of course, to our panelists. I think it's so very true that the school teachers, the police officers, and so on are very often themselves struggling to get by. We even have a new category of housing for them we call workforce housing, because in the marketplace it's so hard on salaries that are paid, solid, what used to be middle-class jobs are now really often very, very precarious. I was hearing this morning on the radio that the typical police officer comes in after a high school education, 21 years old, and so we're not really elevating the profession to attract people with more training, or that's just one example. So for sure, you've got the best and the brightest teachers with you today, or they wouldn't have brought you to this event. So let's have a shout out for your teachers. But we have to take care of our caregivers, and they have to not be struggling so that they can really attend to you. Any other comments from our panelists about this?
One thing I will add is I'm not sure if you guys remember or heard, one of them talked about providing hope, providing hope to neighborhoods. A lot of times it's changing of the school, changing of the neighborhood, changing of certain buildings where it doesn't look like an institution, where it doesn't look like a prison, but it looks, it's a welcoming place for folks to come in. And one of the things is that was mentioned earlier is write to your elected officials. You have to write to your elected officials, because when we spend $7,000 per child on education and spend $26,000 per inmate to house them in a prison, our priorities are off, right? So you guys, like Josh here, you guys are the future. You guys are the voice. Share your voice, just like he did, and you can make a difference.
Great, thank you so much. All right, should we hear some other questions? So we got a lot of people here who want something to say. Please, you know what we'll do? We'll just go back and forth. So just come on up to the microphone, and you can stand up at the microphone and be ready for the, okay, thank you. And give your name if you would, and where you're from, just like we heard from the last speaker.
All righty then, good afternoon. My name is Diamond Rodriguez, and I am a junior at Miami Lakes Educational Center. And my question for the panel is why? Why now are we calling the war on poverty like it was called on in the 60s? Why are we trying to focus on getting back on fighting poverty, coming up with these initiatives like, well, back in the 60s, how the Food Stamp Act and Social Security Act was put in place? Why are we trying to fight it now? What has made it come back into the light? That is my question.
Whoa.
But can I?
Please.
First of all, I don't think the war ever went away. Sometimes we just forgot about it. But I think if we read the Miami Herald this week, you're going to see one example of some of the for-profit schools in the community and how they're disproportionately taking advantage of people who want to get out of poverty, who want to get a better job, who have all these ideas to get an education. And the truth is they're going into huge amounts of debt without the skills necessary and the abilities to get the high-paying jobs. And even if they have them, there aren't the high-paying jobs to find them. So we really need to re-examine. And I really do encourage you to look at that series. It just started. I believe it's a 5-part series. And it shows you the extreme examples of what we're seeing in a society.
So it started Sunday, and it's all this week. And not only is it about preying on people who are vulnerable and trying to get a better opportunity, but it also showcases that it's basically preying on the poor, because people who are making a profit from exploiting people who are really desperate to have a better situation. And so why is it that we're still talking about the war on poverty? Actually, in many ways, things have gotten worse, because after the recession, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and the middle class became the poor. So that's really where we are now. The income gap is growing, and it takes a lot of organizing and paying attention and making your case and advocating to turn that around. We can turn it around, but we can't do it by being silent.
Right. So also there was a 50-year anniversary of the war on poverty, which, and I apologize to the teachers, which made poverty sexy again. It has never, Dr. Bourne's right. We're still here. We've always been here. We have a future here, so we can turn it over. But it's just never been sexy. You know, we've swept the hungry under the rug. We swept the homeless under the rug. We don't want them here. We don't want them there. We just want to have, all the people that are not hungry, that are not homeless in our area. So this is just bringing to light some of the things that we're doing, and hopefully gets more people involved and outraged at what's actually going on.
Okay, let's just go to you, and then we'll go back to you, Joshua. Yes,
thank you.
please.
Okay,
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. And if the
I just quickly want to thank the panel. My name is Martin Maldonado. I'm from Immaculata La Salle High School. So my question, well, I just quickly want to draw attention to the fact that poverty doesn't end at the minimum wage or obviously below the minimum wage, but it recurs throughout different wage categories. And so I want to draw attention to bargaining rights and labor unions, and quickly draw attention to the fact that Wisconsin now and the governor of Wisconsin are signing into law a bill that would effectively destroy public unions' capabilities of recruiting members and standing their ground in terms of collective bargaining. And so basically what I want to ask you is, as a commissioner, what public policies can we bring at the county level in case these sorts of bills are signed at the state level, and if the federal government can do something to counter them too, because I mean, again, poverty doesn't just stop at the minimum wage; it goes beyond that, and I think that the labor force as a whole has to be able to counter the effects of poverty and rising costs of living. So.
Thank you for the question, and I'm certainly looking for those answers. So, as you come up, you give me your ideas, but it's an open door anytime, district8@miamidade.gov. I'll tell you what we're doing so far. We are trying to take the protections that exist in current county law and apply them to anybody who's doing business with the county. That could be an entity that is getting county money through contracts. There's already a living wage ordinance, so you have to pay at least a living wage. There's a prevailing wage in construction. So all county-funded projects, you have to at least provide a prevailing wage. We're trying to extend it to community redevelopment agencies, CRAs, because that's money that would otherwise be going to the county and instead is going to supposedly help a neighborhood that's slum and blighted. Well, if it's going to subsidize poverty, basically, if it's going to be corporate welfare, then that's not really taking our tax money and using it for the good of our population to grow the middle class. It's actually perpetuating lower income jobs. The state legislature in Florida likes to preempt what we do at the county government here. And the legislature, I don't know if any of you are on your Twitter feed right now, but the House just adjourned for session, and there were some bad bills that died with them, but also there were some good bills that died. And some of the bad bills were things that would have eroded some of our protections here in Miami-Dade. So we'll continue to fight for those things. Thank you for the question. Yay. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Enrique Villacreces, and I'm a senior from Arthur and Polymath Conservatory of the Arts. And I have a question with a comment. So let me explain myself. So I'm aware that there are few benefits provided to individuals and families that are dealing with poverty. And even with these benefits that they are being provided with, they are still unable to progress. They are still in the same stage of poverty. And what do you have? What type of solution do you have for these people in order for them to progress and stay and get out from that small stage, that stage of poverty, basically?
So how to actually help families who want to progress.
I mean, even though they are being provided, let's say, food stamp, and probably they're living somewhere and they don't have to pay rent. However, they've been dealing for quite a few years, and they have children, and their children even are still dealing with them. It's like it keeps going.
Okay. So what are some of the pathways out of poverty that families?
Yeah, it's let's say what type of solution you do you have in mind for such thing?
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone want to start with that? Joshua, please.
I feel like the cycle of poverty can be broken in many ways, but I think a big thing is to deal with the next generation and how you can help them with their education, like we talked about. And education is very, very important. And for not only your wage when you're older, but how you can actually get out of poverty too. And in the end, I think that it's important for parents to stress to their kids how important education is, and that they really need to focus on it for our next generations.
And the New York Times had an article this weekend that proved again the value of a four-year college education, and that it is one of the most important factors in helping people still to get out of poverty.
I would add is life skills are extremely important. So when you're working with a family and the family, the art of cooking in a household has gone away for the most part. There's not a lot of people that can prepare a meal. Budgeting or balancing a checkbook has also gone away. So when you have families that are coming into to a pantry or to a place for assistance, it's imperative or it's crucial that we teach our families how to raise a child, how to budget their money, how to budget their food in terms of what's the proper portion control, and how to look for jobs and how to prepare those meals. So there's a lot of different things. Education is huge as in terms of the traditional education, but education in terms of how do you live your life through budgeting and workforce is also pretty critical. So it all comes. And Josh mentioned this earlier. I mean, he ran off a list of all these things that families do need in order to sustain themselves.
So let's just, in the interests of time, if we'll have two different questions, and thank you very much. So we're going to let the next person come up, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so if you could just state your questions, and then, to get more people have a chance. So go ahead.
Oh, first and foremost, I would like to thank you on behalf of Homestead CNI for inviting us. My name is Roy Baez. I'm an 11th grader. And I would like to ask, how can we start a new war on poverty here? And, what would be the obstacles from us helping?
Wonderful. Love it. Please.
Hi, my name is Daniella Palma. I come from Arthur and Polly Mays Conservatory of the Arts. I'm currently a senior. And as mentioned earlier in the discussion, I would like to know what can future generations and the generations of now can expect in education, as it plays such an important role in poverty and how it's currently affecting and will currently and foremost affect their future on.
Whoa. Okay, so we've got how can this generation help us with the new war on poverty, and how education will be critical to going forward. So who'd like to tackle that?
Josh, that's all you, buddy.
One thing is social media, as we all use. I think that something that we need to improve is awareness on hunger, poverty, and different issues that are going on. So I think it's actually our job as this generation that we use technology so much that we should be able to use social media to expand the knowledge of poverty and different issues. And I think that education is going to help in so many ways, because there's so many new fields that people will need to explore into to help the U.S. and the world in general. And education is the thing that will bring them into that through college and beyond that. And there's all sorts of fields that will help people in the long run in different technologies that can help in farming in different areas to lower the cost of food that can help people reach those basic necessities and lower poverty and hunger in the end. So, yeah.
So I'd like to say, we do need to think out of the box. So it's not just about giving people money. I mean, obviously people do need money to maintain pay for their basic needs, but they also need to save, right? They need to be able to put aside money for when there's a downturn in their job or in whatever the life circumstance. We need to really focus on the financial education side of it, the savings. We don't, even though we have financial education in the schools at 4th grade and 12th grade, I just learned yesterday, is that enough? And we also we have a negative savings in this country. Overall, we're all debtors. We're not saving. So that it means that we're always very, very vulnerable. And we need to think about food production and alternative ways of getting food. As far as things you could do educationally, really no matter what you do with your career and your future, you can be a contributing member of society through, yeah, go ahead, you wanted to clarify?
Yeah, one more thing. Families such as one that was interviewed by CNN on the news, the mother is a single mother raising 2 children, and they interviewed her earlier this year about how she would like to increase her education in order to provide more for her family. How can we expect to have people such as her progress in their education in order to afford more opportunities for her family and for her generation?
Great. So important, so true. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is to stay informed, learn about what are the programs that are working, and please sign up for my newsletter. And Joanna in the back, there's Joanna, she's waving. She produces our newsletter. It's about to go out. You can sign up for it at District 8 at miamidade.gov, and we will always let you know the things that we're working on. Go ahead, Joanne.
Follow us on Twitter.
DL Cava, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And we're always sending out information about ways that you can get involved, because there's service. We need to feed the hungry. We need to make sure that the food is distributed. There's advocacy, and there's systemic changes, like making sure that the dollars that we have in our government are used for good purposes, like educating people, and not putting people in debt for the rest of their lives when they go to school, right? That's not a good anti-poverty strategy.
Commissioner,
Great.
I would like to just say,
Please.
I received a report from Steve Leifman, one of our judges in town, and we were talking about the cost here is $900 million annually to take care of mentally ill in the Florida jails. And we broke it down into 3 categories, and I think that this really tells us how we can better use our resources, which is really what ultimately this is about. When we put people in jail with mental illness, it's $900,000 per day. When we put them in prison per person, it's $1.1 million per day. When we put them in a forensic treatment facility, which is where they should be there, it's $544,000 per day. We need to be putting people in the right place, using the resources appropriately. A lot of these folks, need to be supervised. They need assistance, but they don't necessarily need, the big prisons and the big jail systems. They just need, treatment facilities.
So our most frequent place for mental health treatment is in the jails today. And there's going to be a big announcement about that Thursday, a big press conference, so look for the news. And we're working on something called social impact bonds that allows, like, the prison system to spend the money up front to get people out of jail and into jobs, because down the line it'll save us all money. The government doesn't have the money to pay for those things up front, but the private sector could put the money in, and then they could get return on their investment for making those good social investments. So that's one
local.
solution. Well, we're exploring it. We've got legislation coming along. We're trying to work with people to put that together. But it's working in New York for Rikers Island Prison. They're taking people out of prison. They're putting them into jobs, into support programs in the community. It's keeping them out of prison, saving the state money, and then the state is paying back the bondholders.
Super.
So there you
The
go.
reason I asked is because right now, the prisons are privatized here in Florida, which means the more people that are in prison, the more money that the company makes.
Another
houses
example of profiting
From
on
prison.
exploiting people.
and poverty.
So, okay, thank you so much to
Thank
you
you.
two. If the next 2 could come on up. Thank you.
Good morning, panel. My name is Julius Wade. I'm a junior at William H. Turner Technical Arts High School. And my question, taking into account the relative success of federal programs like New Deal and Great Society, what kind of legislation, be it federal, state, or county, would you suggest to combat poverty as it exists in our communities?
Okay, so federal programs that will have the vision and get the job done. Let's hear the next question or comment.
My name is Adrian Rodriguez. I am a senior at Mays Conservatory of the Arts. I am very aware that, poverty has taken its toll on many people in our country. But what I don't understand is, if education is so important, then why was Florida Bright's future basically done away with?
Ooh. All right, panel. Awesome.
And that is
Okay.
why you guys need to continue to talk to your elected officials. In certain areas, you look at the lottery, right? The lottery is supposed to pay for education, right? That's what it's supposed to do. However, when you take what you're already spending on education and you say, okay, now the lottery is going to pay for it, then you take away what you're already putting in, and now the lottery is paying for it. So in essence, instead of doubling what you've done for education, all you've done is supplant it, and you move that money and pay for other random stuff. So right now, it doesn't seem like education is a priority for our legislature.
Or our governor.
Our governor, right? Our legislature or governor, right? Our elected officials at the state level have not prioritized education. And that's where, when you guys say, what can we do to get involved, is what you guys just did now. Get angry, get excited, get passionate about those things that move you, that drive you, and then do something about it, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Right.
Well, and I would like to say, I think it also goes to the thing about Medicaid expansion right now. You know, we had a governor who said he didn't like it, then he said he was going to be supportive, and then he changed his mind. Then you have the Republicans controlling both the House and the Senate, and the House has said, no way, we're not passing this, to the point that they adjourned today and didn't finish their budget. And the Senate, which is supported by the Republicans, they split and said, we'd like to do Medicaid expansion. And I think we all should really look at Medicaid expansion. Again, it goes to what I was talking about earlier, is how do we get more people insured to take care of them at the right place at the right time, rather than at the expense of an emergency room down the road when it may be too late to really get some meaningful change.
Great. Joshua, did you want to say something? No, okay. So I'll say something more about that. It is all about our priorities. And, you know, the governor wanted to give tax cuts. He did also want to increase per child expenditure for schools. So that was his priority. But even what he wanted to do only brought it back to the same level as when he came into office, because we've had decreases in student spending. At the college level, it's not just Bright Futures. The payments to community colleges, to state universities, is down. It's a huge challenge how these institutions are staying afloat, and it does really reflect our priorities. So thank you. As far as you brought the Bright Futures question, federal policy. Well, what could we be doing that would really make a big difference? One thing that we're really pushing is children's savings accounts. These are things that, other countries do this, where they start investing in children from an early age, a savings account. It's matched by either private or government sources, so that you're building up some equity in each child that can then encourage people to look ahead to post-secondary education. It also helps the family to save. I mean, there's many, many things we could do, but that's just one example, children's savings accounts. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 7 minutes left in the program, so we're going to try to, have your question quick so we can get more information out there. We'll go to the young lady first.
Hi, my name is Melissa Stosh. I'm from William H. Turner Technical Arts High School, and my question to the panel is, how much responsibility should the national government assume when combating the war on poverty today?
How much responsibility should the federal government assume? Okay, and your question?
Hello, my name is Christian Pineda from Mays Conservatory of the Arts, 6 through 12. First of all, before beginning my question, you said you had something to do with Camillus, right? I wanted to know, what can someone expect from these programs like Camillus and Chapman, since I see so many people go to these programs, they get kicked out. And like just today, I saw a guy from who I used to see from the shelter, and he was just out there like sleeping on a bench. And I see many people go to these shelters and these like Camillus and all that. They say they get like a guaranteed, like a better lifestyle, but their lives actually get worse after. So what can someone expect that?
Okay, you want to go to that first? Anything about
Yeah, that's a
shelter
loaded
requirements?
question. I mean, I think that when you come into a shelter, you have to give up a certain amount of autonomy to live within a structure. And I think a lot of people don't like to do that. So a lot of people do leave a structured setting. Not any one thing can solve every problem or every issue that we have. And every case is very, very different. So, I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you after this is over about some individuals and some of the situations, but there is no one single answer.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there aren't enough beds in shelters for the people that need them.
True.
So we really don't have enough. And I know because we call constantly to get people into the shelters, and they're waiting and waiting. They have to really be, they can't even be staying with a friend. They have to be literally on the street. If they have children, they're given some priority. So we really don't have adequate resources right now for all the homeless.
Correct.
So it's a problem. As far as what's the federal government's responsibility, it's the federal, it's the state, it's the local, and it's all of us. It's maybe harsh to say, but we do get the quality of legislators that reflect how much we put into it. And it's really, really incumbent upon all of us to really be paying attention and asking tough questions. And when people say they're not voting, why? We had the lowest voter turnout in November of any county in the state of Florida. You know, it's really a crime. So people are getting elected based on name recognition rather than on some of these tough questions. Who's really going to represent us and do the things that we think are important? Got to start local, but you got to go national too. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
both of you, for your questions. Great. And this, unfortunately, will have to be the last couple of questions because we have to wrap up at 3. So we'll go to you first.
Hello, my name is Ruben Dixon from Arthur and Polly Mays Conservatory of the Arts, and I'm in the 12th grade. I really don't have a question, I have a statement. My statement is basically that we all complain about basically the poverty level and everything, but we are really not doing anything for ourselves to better it. A lot of people state, oh, okay, we're asking questions about what can you guys do, instead of asking what they can do on their own, as in going out in the community, as you said earlier, sorry. A lot of people don't do the things that they should do as for themselves and then expect others to do it for them. So my statement is that if we all come together and raise awareness of it, we can all better ourselves and better the poverty level as well.
Thank you so much for that. Yes. And if each one of us reaches out to somebody that we know and who believes in us, then we can really make a difference in our lives and in their lives. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Guillermo Tomas. I'm from Immaculata LaSalle, and I'm a senior. So I think very quickly as this conversation expanded, we learned that there are interconnected issues that are linked to poverty. The issue of mental illness was brought up. And very quickly, I linked that with the issue of persons with physical disabilities and how they have to face certain issues that others do not, especially in the job market. Because of accessibility and sometimes discrimination, they are put in positions where they are very likely to fall into poverty. So my question is, how can we take a more comprehensive approach to poverty that includes specific groups that are more affected by it?
Thank you. So very, very true. I'll just mention one thing I've recently learned about. There's an organization called the Disability Impact Group. Is that right, Joanna? Disability Independence Group, DIG. And they're doing a lot to promote access and awareness, jobs, of course, but also to a whole set of rights. And I commend you to look it up, DIG, and find out some of the things that they're doing. And, you know, we do have laws that protect people, but that's not the same as enforcing them or really being proactive about being inclusive and rights for people. Yeah, thank you. We're going to look at one thing we learned about yesterday in the Prosperity Council is that there's federal money, and this is to the question about what could the federal government be doing. There's federal money for subsidized jobs. So that would be for any population that's having particular difficulty getting a job. It's for the formerly incarcerated. It's for people with disabilities. It's for, you know, any set of things. And we're going to look into drawing down some of that money, because once you subsidize a person in a job, it's more likely that the employer will see the benefit of employing that person and then continue with that person after the subsidy. So that's one thing we're looking at. Thank you for your question. Anybody else on that?
I just want to say also at Camillus, if you'd be surprised how many people are in a wheelchair or a walker with physical disabilities that had formerly been on the street and are now in some of our housing units. So it is a huge issue.
Okay, with the permission of the group, it's now 3:00, and I was told that that's our closing time. I don't know, there's 3 others of you standing up. If you could just maybe, I don't think we can really respond, but if you want to just say what's on your mind, we'll give you that opportunity. Okay.
First and foremost, good afternoon. I'm Paco Juarez from Homestead Senior High School. Same name.
And you can always follow up later, right?
Yes, exactly. Question. The question is, what is the group doing for the feminization of poverty? Why not help the mother of the children that are in poverty? Why not help them instead of the people?
Okay. We're gonna get it all out, all 4 of you who are still standing, and then we'll see if we have any time to respond. So let's go to you. Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, I'll be quick. My name is Alejandro Munoz. I'm with Immaculata LaSalle High School, and I'm a senior. I oftentimes think that when discussing the war on poverty, violence is left out. I think that violence plays a huge factor into creating a systematic form of poverty. And I want to know what's being done on a county level to address this, and moving forward from that, what should we do as a whole, as a country, to come together and stop this polarization between police forces and civilians in disadvantaged neighborhoods?
Well, a point of privilege, since I'm here, I'm going to answer both of the last questions, and then we'll just keep going. As far as feminization of poverty, we are passing a law, hopefully, to look at pay equity issues in the county and to fight for equal wages, because women are still making 78 cents on the dollar for men. So look for that. Yeah. Yeah. And as far as violence, I say we're so very fortunate that some of these major incidents have not yet happened in our community. And I'm going to New York on Thursday to be with people from around the country to look at police-community relations and see how we can strengthen them. And there's something called Operation Restoration, chaired by Commissioner Edmondson, which is looking at anti-violence strategies, and we're looking at adopting some programs that have been proven effective in other places to reduce violence. It's not a panacea. There's so much more that needs to be done, but for sure, we're all very concerned. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the board.
Please.
Hi, my name is Frankie Agosto, and I go to school at Arthur and Polly Mays Conservatory of the Arts. I'm a senior, and my question is more directed towards Mr. Boone. If I said that right? Boone. And my question is, do you feel that Camillus House has made homelessness more comfortable the same way that the government has done with subsidized rents, food stamps, and Social Security along with welfare?
Whoa. Okay, let's just get your thoughts together. Let's get the last two of you to come on up and say your piece, and because I know we have to wrap it up. Please.
Hello, I'm Crystal Cicada. I'm from Arthur and Polly Mays. It's more of a comment, not really a question, or a suggestion, basically. Since education is a big portion of poverty, to prevent it, how about we start educating our students and ahead of time about financing and how to save money and prevent yourself from getting into poverty, and making it more accessible to the people who don't have those, like computers, they don't have computers or anything, more accessible for that information for them so they can receive it.
So I think this is what we do here. Instead of applaud, we wave our hands. Yes. I think we all can agree with that point. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Torian Holness, and I come from Arthur and Polly Mays Conservative Arts. My question deals with the criminalization and police brutality towards those living in poverty, and my question is towards you guys. What do your programs and various hands in society do to deconstruct the mentality behind the dehumanization towards those living in poverty?
Okay, so that is a good closing question. Let me let you answer the other question, and then we'll wrap it up.
I just wanted.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I don't think there's anything comfortable about poverty, and I think you look at something like Social Security, which is a great program. It's a fantastic program, but also people save on top of that, so it's not an end-all, be-all. And I think that while the goal of places like Camillus and other shelters and other programs is to help show humanity and respect to people, we can't be the answer to everything. So it really does take a collaboration.
Did you want to address the other issue about dependency?
I don't see the issues of dependency, so it's hard for me to really answer that question because, like I said, I have been at Camillus less than a year now, and I haven't seen anybody choose to be homeless. I haven't seen anybody choose to be poor. I haven't seen anybody choose to be on the other side of police brutality, for that matter. So there are all sorts of issues, and people bring their preconceived notions to the table, including myself. I brought my own preconceived notions of what I would see at work, and it's not what I see at work. And I think it's incredibly important that we get a chance to know each other. And Josh mentioned earlier something about social media, and I think that social media is fantastic, not just to know what our friends are doing, but also to know what our friends are thinking, what our friends are doing in the community, how can we all make things better, learn about these things. And I think the more that you learn, the more that you can then conversate with your friends and have these conversations to take it to a new level. And then I think it's a matter of empowering yourselves as the next generation to vote. I don't have any kids, so the buck stops with me. I mean, this is about y'all's future. And that's what I really hope you guys vote and get involved and figure out how you can make this better for yourselves and your future.
Yeah. So I want to make a final comment and then thank you all. And Paco wants to make a final comment.
Well, yeah, before your final comment,
Go
that way
ahead.
you can have the final
Okay,
comment.
okay, let you go and then I'll go.
Then,
Yeah, yeah.
so I just wanted to say real quick what Dr. Boren was mentioning. So when you look at the minimum wage, everybody know what the minimum wage is in Florida? All right, good, $8.05.
$8.05 an hour.
Right, $8.05.
Which
So
is
when
like
you,
$16,000 a year.
it's exactly,
Full-time salary.
it's exactly what it is, $16,000 a year. And so you take a family of four, that means $32,000 a year. You look at SNAP or food stamp benefits, it's for a family of four, you can make up to $30,000 a year for SNAP benefits. Now, there's certain deductions that will allow maybe that family to get those SNAP benefits, but if they make a quarter an hour more, not only are they kicked off of SNAP benefits, but their children no longer receive free lunches at school. So that 1/4 an hour ends up costing them thousands and thousands of dollars in the long run through lost food at the cafeteria, through lost food with SNAP, through lost medical benefits, and there's a lot of money that they lose. So it's not so much a comfort level as it is a policy issue.
So to the last question, humanity. That's really what it's about. Because if we really cared for each other, we wouldn't have this kind of poverty. We wouldn't have this kind of degradation, and we wouldn't have this kind of suffering. So nothing replaces meeting people, getting to know them, humanizing them. Social media is great, but getting out and meeting people and getting to know them, that's the best. And then you can see, we're all in this world struggling together. Thank you very, very much for your time and attention.
So I wanted to thank, again, all of our panelists for taking the time out of their very, very busy schedules to be with us today for this important conversation, not only at the national level, but at the local level as well. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Miami-Dade County Board of County Commissioners. We're so happy that so many of the county commissioners were able to invite students from their districts to come and participate today. And this is being broadcast, and it's going to be archived. So I encourage teachers who couldn't be here today to go ahead and tap into this availability online so that your students can also have this conversation in their classrooms or from your home. I'd also like to thank the Miami-Dade Office of Community Advocacy for having us here today, for being a partner with us from day one to bring this conversation to the county at this level. And the Smithsonian. If it wasn't for the Smithsonian, we wouldn't be here looking at this. Every year, the Smithsonian chooses a different topic for the National Youth Summit, and they decided to get into this really deep conversation today. And they didn't know what was going to be happening today when they selected this topic, but it's very topical, and I'm glad that we were all very honest about how we feel about it. So I commend all of you for your questions and your comments. And I want to thank the museum staff for helping us bring all of you here and getting everyone engaged in this conversation. History Miami is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year, and we are the keepers of your stories. And we're also the ones that are encouraging you all to be civically engaged. And I think a lot of what we heard today from our panelists is that it all lies with you. You are the solution. So I actively encourage you all to vote when you turn of age, to be educated voters, and to volunteer as much as possible in your community. The History Miami Museum, which is right across the street, offers you all volunteer and internship opportunities. We have wonderful exhibitions, and we also have a repository of stories. So we hope that you will engage not only with us so that you can understand where we're coming from as a community, but so that you can also be part of the solution for where we are going. So on behalf of History Miami and everyone here at the county, I want to wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you all again, and hope that we will see you all again next year. Thank you.